She is standing in front of a mirror in Los Angeles, and she does not recognize the face looking back at her. Bandages just came off. The surgery was supposed to be routine. A polyp removed from her nose. Nothing more. But somewhere on the operating table, something went wrong. The bridge of her nose collapsed. And when Priyanka Chopra finally looked at her own reflection, she has said, in her own words, that a stranger looked back at her. Think about that for a second. This is a woman who, at 18 years old, was crowned Miss World. A woman whose face, quite literally, was her passport into an industry that worships faces. And now, at the very start of her film career, that face was gone, replaced, unrecognizable. The tabloids didn't care about the medical truth. They ran with a simpler story: vanity, a nose job, an actress chasing perfection. Nobody was interested in the reality that this was a botched surgery, not a choice. And she, being who she is, didn't run to the cameras to defend herself. She just absorbed it, quietly, while her career, the one she had barely started building, sat frozen. This is where we begin. Not at the crown, not at the red carpet. Here, in a moment when everything she'd worked for looked like it might be over before it even started. Because here's what most people get wrong about stories like hers. We see the glamour now, the magazine covers, the Hollywood premieres, the global brand she's built, and we assume it was inevitable. We assume someone that talented, that driven, was always going to make it. But that's not a story, that's a highlight reel. And highlight reels lie by omission. The real story is messier. It's a girl from Jamshedpur, daughter of 2 army doctors, who grew up being shuffled between boarding schools and different cities because her parents were serving in the Indian Army. It's a teenager sent to live with relatives in the American Midwest, where she was bullied for the color of her skin, called names in hallways, made to feel like she didn't belong in a country she was trying to call home. She has spoken about this openly, how that experience nearly broke something in her before she'd even turned 17. She left, went back to India, rebuilt herself there, one pageant win at a time. First Miss India, then Miss World in the year 2000, at just 18 years old. And even that, even winning one of the most coveted titles on the planet, didn't guarantee her anything. It just handed her a door. What she did after walking through it, that's the part worth studying. So picture her again, standing in that mirror, nose bandaged, face unfamiliar, career stalled before it began. This is the hidden struggle nobody puts in the trailer. Because after that surgery went wrong, she needed more procedures just to reconstruct what was lost. Multiple surgeries. Years, not weeks. And during all of it, Bollywood, an industry built on image, built on gossip, built on judgment, was watching, waiting to decide whether she was still worth casting. Some directors quietly moved on. Some projects she was meant to be part of simply disappeared. Nobody handed her a statement of solidarity. Nobody owed her patience. She has said in her memoir that every glance in the mirror during that time felt like looking at a stranger, and that she wasn't sure her sense of self would ever fully come back. That's the moment that breaks most people. Not the failure itself, the silence around it, the waiting, the not knowing if the thing you built your identity on is still there. But here's the turning point. She didn't go on a press tour to correct the narrative. She didn't spend her energy convincing tabloids they were wrong about her. Instead, she went back to work, quietly, relentlessly. She took roles. She kept showing up on sets. And slowly, the industry that had hesitated on her started to remember why they'd wanted her in the first place. Not because of a headline, but because of what she did on camera. By 2004, she was starring in Aitraz, playing a role that required real range, not just red carpet appeal. And by 2008, She delivered the performance that would define this entire chapter. Fashion, where she played a supermodel who rises, falls, and has to rebuild her own sense of self from nothing. It's almost eerie how close that story sat to her own life. That performance won her the National Film Award for Best Actress. The industry that had quietly written question marks next to her name a few years earlier was now handing her its highest honor. And this is the principle worth taking from this chapter of her life. You don't owe the world an explanation for things that were never your fault. You don't have to win the argument in the press. Sometimes the most powerful response to being misunderstood is simply refusing to explain yourself and letting the work speak instead. Silence, paired with discipline, is its own kind of answer. Now, let's shift the temperature again. Because surviving one storm doesn't mean the sky stays clear. Picture Bollywood in the 2000s. It is, by nearly every honest account, an industry run on legacy. Certain families open certain doors for their children. If your father was a star, your path was smoother. If you walked in with no connections, no last name that meant anything on a marquee, you fought for every single scene, every single line, every single frame of screen time. Priyanka Chopra walked in with none of that inherited access. No godfather in the industry, just a Miss World title, and whatever talent she could prove, film after film, on her own. And the resistance she faced wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was subtle, the kind of quiet misogyny that doesn't make headlines but shapes an entire career underneath the surface. She's spoken about being told by a director early in her career that she needed cosmetic surgery she didn't want just to fit a mold someone else had decided she should fit. She's spoken about male co-stars showing up late to set with no consequences, while the expectations placed on her were entirely different. This is the unglamorous middle of the story. Not one dramatic villain, but 1,000 small moments of having to prove, again and again, that she deserved to be in the room. Here's what's easy to miss when we talk about ambitious people. We love the word hustle, but we rarely sit with what hustle actually costs. It costs sleep. It costs relationships. It costs your peace of mind, over and over, in an industry that never quite promises you'll be treated fairly just because you're good at your job. So, what did she do with that pressure? This is the turning point of this chapter. And it's not a single dramatic moment. It's a pattern of choices. Instead of chasing the safest, most commercially bulletproof roles, the ones that flatter an actress and guarantee box office numbers, she kept choosing difficult, complicated women to play. A courtesan seeking justice in Seven Kun Maaf, a woman with dissociative identity disorder in Kamini, and most notably in 2014, she took on the role of Mary Kom, the boxer from Manipur who fought her way to a world championship against a system that barely acknowledged her sport, let alone her ambition. Playing an athlete meant physical transformation, boxing training, months of discomfort that had nothing to do with looking beautiful on camera and everything to do with looking real. By choosing roles that scared her, instead of roles that flattered her, she was quietly rewriting what people expected from a former beauty queen. She was proving, film by film, that the crown was never the point. It was just the opening scene. And that gives us the principle for this stage of her journey. Growth almost never lives inside your comfort zone. It lives in the roles, the projects, the decisions that make your stomach tighten a little before you say yes. If you keep choosing the safe option because it's safe, you will always be known for the same thing. But if you keep choosing the thing that scares you slightly more than the last thing did, that's how a reputation actually expands. Now here's where the story does something almost nobody expects. This is usually the part in someone's career where they sit back and enjoy it. She was, by the mid-2010s, one of the biggest female stars in Indian cinema. Commercially bankable, critically respected, financially secure beyond anything she needed. By most definitions, she had already won, and that's exactly the moment she chose to start over. Completely over. In 2015, Priyanka Chopra signed on to lead an American network television drama called Quantico, playing an FBI recruit at the center of a terrorism conspiracy. Think about what that actually meant. In India, she was a household name, someone whose face could open a film on reputation alone. In America, she was an unknown, a first-time lead on network television, in an industry where South Asian actors had almost never been handed a starring role like this before. She wasn't the famous one walking onto that set. She was the new one. The one who had to prove herself all over again, from zero. This wasn't her first attempt at crossing over either. And this matters, because it shows the struggle wasn't hidden, even from her own resume. Years earlier, around 2011, she tried to break into the American music industry, releasing singles, working with well-known producers, chasing a sound that could stand on its own. By her own account, it didn't work. The music, she has said, fell short of her own standards. After a few years of trying, she made the difficult decision to walk away from it, rather than keep forcing something that wasn't landing. That's not usually the part of a highlight reel anyone shows you. The attempt that simply didn't work. So when Quantico came along, she wasn't stepping into Hollywood as someone with an unbroken streak of wins. She was stepping in as someone who had already tasted a very public, very real failure in that same country, on a completely different stage. And she chose to try again anyway. The show became the turning point that redefined her entire career. Quantico made her the first South Asian actress to headline an American network drama. It wasn't a small role or a supporting character written in for diversity's sake. She was the lead, carrying episodes, carrying storylines, carrying the weight of an entire show on her shoulders in a country that had never really seen someone who looked like her in that position before. From there, the doors kept opening. A Hollywood film debut in Baywatch in 2017. Roles in projects like The Girl on the Train, a growing production company, a global platform that extended into business and humanitarian work as a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador, a role she has held for years, using her visibility to advocate for children's rights and education around the world. And this is the principle worth sitting with from this stage of her journey. Real growth almost always requires you to be willing to become a beginner again, especially at the exact moment you feel most established. It is deeply uncomfortable to walk away from a place where you are respected and into a place where you are, once again, unproven. Most people won't do it. They'll stay where the applause is loudest and the risk is lowest. But nothing new ever grows in a space you've already mastered. If you want a bigger story, at some point you have to accept being the least experienced person in the room. Again. So let's step back and look at the whole arc, because that's really what this video has been about. A teenager who got bullied for how she looked and where she came from, and had to leave a country to protect her own sense of self. A young actress whose face was altered by a surgery she never chose, and who had to rebuild her identity and her career without ever getting a public apology for it. An outsider in an industry built on bloodlines, who chose difficult, uncomfortable roles instead of easy, comfortable ones. And finally, a woman at the height of her success, who was willing to burn it all down and start from nothing, just to see how far she could actually go. None of that is luck. None of that is just being talented. although she clearly is. What ties every single one of these chapters together is a mindset. The refusal to let other people's opinions decide the ending of her story. The refusal to explain herself to critics instead of just doing the work. The refusal to stay comfortable when comfort meant staying small. And here is the part that actually matters for you, watching this right now. This isn't a video about how impressive Priyanka Chopra is. You already know that. This is a video about what her path proves is possible for anyone willing to walk it. It proves that a setback, even one as public and humiliating as a botched surgery and a wave of ugly rumors, doesn't have to be the end of your story. It's just a chapter, and chapters end. It proves that being an outsider with no connections, no safety net, no shortcut, isn't a disqualifier. It's just a harder starting line. And it proves that the biggest leaps forward in your life will almost never feel safe when you take them. They'll feel like starting over. Because they are. So here's what I want you to take from this. Somewhere in your life right now, there's a version of that mirror moment. A setback, a rumor, a failure, a fresh start that terrifies you. And the question isn't whether it's fair. Life rarely is. The question is whether you're willing to do what she did. Go quiet, go to work, and let the results speak on your behalf, one uncomfortable choice at a time. Every single person watching this has a golden chapter waiting for them. A version of themselves on the other side of the hardest decision they haven't made yet. So here's what I want you to do before you leave this video. Drop one word in the comments. Just one. The word that represents the goal you're chasing right now. The thing you know you need to start, or restart, or stop being afraid of. Write it down where I can see it. Let it be real. And if this story moved you even a little, stay with us, subscribe, and become part of the Golden Grace family. Because we are just getting started telling stories like this one. Stories about the mindsets that quietly build unstoppable people. Your golden chapter is out there. Go claim it.